Hi guys, so this next project I'm just going to call shaded ribbons, and what we're going to do is a process in which we're going to apply stippling and hatching and cross hatching to create some shadowy areas for these ribbons. So hopefully you'll like this. What you're going to need for this project is of course a white piece of paper. Now you can just exclusively use a pencil, but I would prefer it if you had at some point during the process go over stuff with something permanent, even if it's just a ballpoint pen. You can use a variety of different colors if you want, but I wouldn't use multiple colors on this. I'm just kind of saying that you can use, if you have a red pen, you can do the whole thing in red. If you have a blue pen, you can do the whole thing in blue, that kind of thing. So, but yeah, one thing, pencil start with, but then going over everything, I prefer the pen, okay? Black, blue, red, whatever. Ballpoint pen is fine. If you have any other types of pens that we did with the stippling, such as a felt tip pen or a very thin Sharpie marker, something like that would be completely fine. So here's a couple more examples of the same type of project. Like I said, it's a bunch of ribbons, and then we are going to be putting some shadows and stuff on them. So I would like you to use somewhere between a 5 and 6 inch square. That would be fine. So if you don't have a ruler, I assume that the majority of you have some sort of measuring device where you can measure 5 or 6 inches. But in case you don't, what you can take is, this is just a piece of photocopy paper. And you can take a piece of copy paper and you can just fold it in half. And a piece of copy paper is 8.5 by 11. So if you fold it in half the long way, this is your 5.5 right here, bam, bam. So if you want to apply that to your paper, you can do that. Okay, so let's make a square. So I usually go from one of the edges of a piece of paper. So as I said, if you have the that copy paper, you can just place that on there and get yourself a guide for the 5.5 kind of thing, like this, and then you can draw a straight edge. So you can make a mark here, draw your straight edge, and you know, put this paper kind of nice and perpendicular to the side of your other paper, even if you want to come kind of close. You want to make sure you have some sort of border around, you know, about a 1/2 inch or so, because when we make the square, you're going to build up the ribbons outside. So if you recall, you're going to build, here's the initial square right here, and you're going to be building these ribbons outside. So leave yourself some space, but you can absolutely use this as a guide if you'd like. And you can lightly draw it here, draw it here, and draw it here. And then what you're going to do is you're going to turn it, line the edge up here into the top, and I know you can probably just barely see it, but you can see I have the lines there. So I'd go with something more than a piece of paper for the straight edge, something a little harder. If you wanted to just go with a ruler, give yourself, like I said, you know, at least a 1/2 inch from the edge. This is, I'm going to go 1 inch. And I'm just going to draw over the other lines. And so I'm going to go with 2 lines, 1 inch away. These lines could be kind of dark. You don't want to make any of these lines overly dark. So now I'm going to be drawing a line. Now I used this mark right here, just I came in 1 inch, and I'm going to start at 16, and I'm going to go 5.5 inches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the half. Make a little mark there. So that's line number 1. And then from here, I measure 5.5 from here. Measure 5.5 from here. Okay. And now for the edges over here, I'll go 1 inch from the side. Oh, sorry about that. Got 1 inch from the side down below. Make a mark. 1 inch from the side down below. Make a mark up above, and then I'm going to make another mark at 5.5 here, and another mark at 5.5 here. And then I'm just going to connect my lines together. Now I'm making the lines longer than I'm going to need, but that is okay. I have the thing on the other end of my pencil known as an eraser, and then I can just erase it. So let's go ahead and clean up the edges, and now you have your square. All right, so the next step is we're going to start working on making our 10 to 12 ribbons. All right, so making ribbons, it's literally just a wavy line, and you want it to start from one end and come down the other. You don't want it to be too short where you want this thing to curve immediately. I mean, you can, but you know, at least for the start, especially the first few, you probably want them to be pretty conservative. So you're just going to start making a wavy line like this. Do it kind of lightly until you're pretty sure you're going to be keeping these lines. And then you're going to draw another line right next to it, and it's okay if you come a far away and close together to it later on. You know, like you got far apart, then it got close together, and then far apart again. But you know, you just want them to be joined up. So that's your first ribbon. You don't have to do a thing to it. In fact, nothing is going to be added to that first ribbon at all. There's not going to be any shading or anything inside this space. So you want to make sure that stays clean. Now the second ribbon, you can go in a completely different direction. It can look completely different. So when you draw this next line for your first ribbon, you do not want anything to be through this. So if you start your line, you can't go through any other lines. So as soon as you get to somewhere, you stop and you have to continue it as though it's going behind it. So when you create another ribbon, so you want to not go through there, and then you continue it along. Okay, so that's ribbon number 2. So now I'm going to go with ribbon number 3. Okay, now before I go further with the ribbon number 3, what you want to do for yourself is put marks very, very lightly. That's ribbon number 2, so I put a number 2 on both segments. Okay, so when I start ribbon number 3, believe me, you're going to thank me later for this. When you do these ribbons, you just want to make sure that you have them marked. So, and you don't want to go through any lines. So there's number 3. This is number 3. That's number 3, and that's number 3. Okay? So you just keep this process going until you have all of your ribbons completed. They can go in different directions. They can get big and small. You might have seen in a sample that they had where the ribbon went like this, and that's completely fine too, where they crisscross. It's like as though a ribbon twisted. That is completely fine. So now we're on 4, 4, 4. So this is 5. So make sure you mark all these at 5. So you just keep going with this until you have between 10 and 12 ribbons. So if you look at this negative space, meaning the stuff that doesn't have any numbers at all, oh, by the way, you could put number 1 on your first ribbon if you want. But where there's all this negative space, a lot of it's going to get filled in. So you can see, as I have these samples over here, you could see there's not a lot of this dark, shadowy space because the ribbons fill it in. With my sample here, I probably had a little bit more negative space than usual. But you just want to make sure that you fill this up. And I am requesting that you have between 10 and 12 ribbons. So if you see a spot that's kind of big, you might want to pay attention to that and start drawing your ribbon to cut through it. You probably want to do this step all at once. Like, don't put it down and come back to it later, just because you're going to lose count of all the numbers that you have. So I'm on number 6. By the way, you have this huge, if you're working on just a big piece of copy paper or a piece of drawing paper like I am, I mean, you got all this area to mark down. So even if you need to take notes, like if you have to go walk the dog or something like that, you could write down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And, kind of check them off as you go along, just to kind of indicate that you've done these already, okay? So you're going to continue on. And I've just noticed that the whole time that I'm doing this video, I'm going to have to see if I can flip it. I'm kind of working sideways. So, and work lightly, because if you change your mind, like I'm not really digging where this ribbon's going, it allows you to erase it completely. A lot of it's going to be covered in shading, but especially in the background. But I'm getting crazy with this one. Again, not digging it. I like that. Okay, good. So that was number 7. Okay, so you just keep going through this process until, again, you have between 8 and 10. If you make the ribbons really small, you're probably going to need 12, like very thin. If you have the ribbons kind of thicker, you probably only need 10. So just keep that in mind as you're working. You might say, wow, my space is filled, but I only have a 9, so just put one more in and call it a day. Whereas some people make 12 and you think that, wow, none of the space is filled in. It's probably because the ribbons are crazy thin. So, a good rule of thumb, maybe keep the ribbons, think about like your pencil, no thinner than your pencil, or, like maybe the averages, or your finger. Okay. So this is 8. That's going to be 8 right there. 8, 8. And you just keep going with this until you get the 10. Okay, so this design is laid out, all ready to go, ready to get some pen on it. So the very first thing you're going to do is to darken all of the negative space areas, the spaces that have no ribbons. So you may want to just go back and double check. There might be some ribbons that aren't marked. Like right over here, this ribbon, number 12. I did not mark it. So you just want to make sure that everything is properly marked, so that way you don't start filling in an area that is supposed to be part of a ribbon. As you go along here, and I didn't say this in the written instructions, is you can go over the lines if you want as well. You can go over these ribbon lines if you feel like that's going to make you feel more comfortable, but you make sure you use something thin. If you have, if you're jumping around with different thicknesses of pen, you probably want to do that. Like I said, something kind of thin. So I have various kinds of pens, a couple that we had from school. Like I have the Copic pens, if you remember those. I do have a thin Sharpie marker, and I'm probably going to use that for a lot of the background because it is so heavy and dark. I might even consider filling it in with a Sharpie, but you just want to make sure those edges you want to hit with a thinner pen than that. So, you know, figure out what your plan is, and you have this extra negative space background up in here, so you can certainly try out different pens. So once you find one that you like, you go for it. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to fill in all of these negative spaces. Now, just a side note, if you're using copy paper is great because copy paper has a lot of, how should we say, it's a very tight printed or created paper, pressed paper, like a cold press. So what that's going to do is it's going to make it not so porous. So in other words, if you start using a pen and you find that it starts bleeding, you have to kind of work in strokes like I am. And if you're using construction paper or drawing paper, you might run into this where it's going to start bleeding, so you kind of have to work quickly. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of going through here. Now you have a choice, right? You can just do a really tight hatch, cross hatch, make it crazy, crazy dark. Or some people prefer to just fill in these areas. That's completely up to you. So you're going to find all of your areas and fill them in. Now you notice that I went around the edge first, just to make sure that I keep that space nice and clean and deliberate looking. You don't want it to look like a big blob, and you want those corners to look nice and crisp. So you're going to be going over all of these spaces here, filling them all in. Okay. Some people prefer to kind of mark them. You know, that might be something that I'm going to do. I just kind of put a line through them so I know which ones are going to be filled in. So if I start watching a movie as I'm working here and I get a little distracted, this will keep me in check. All right. So like I said, if you want to fill it in with a thicker marker, you can certainly do that. The last one I filled in with a marker. This one I literally went around the edge of the spaces. I went around the edge of the spaces and then I just filled them in with a Sharpie. So if you like the look of that, that's fine. This one I'm going to do some tight hatching. Really, really, really crazy, as dark as I can possibly make it hatching, which might look like it's filled in. When you do this, you just want to make sure everything looks neat and consistent. These spaces should look all the same darkness. So here it is all filled in, all the negative space filled in. I did not go over with pen the lines of each of the ribbons, but I'm going to save that for later. But if you notice that I did keep all the numbers, okay, that's going to be necessary for the next step. And you just want to go back and check to make sure that all the background is filled in. Make sure you got all your spots. This might actually be a little easier to start to be able to see the ribbons. Before I put the black on, it might have been a bit difficult to kind of differentiate what the ribbons are and what the background is. So this should absolutely help you. And like I said, make sure, as I said before, that it is nice and consistent. You can see some spots that I didn't fill in completely, but it's consistent. So the scratches and such are consistently throughout, where it all kind of looks like it is the same space. If you feel like you want to put more lines in some spaces because it doesn't look as dark as some of the others, you can certainly go back and do that. Okay, so the next step is going to be starting with ribbon, acknowledging ribbon number 1, but then jumping into ribbon number 2 and creating those creating those shadows. Now this step is going to require you to pick out your ribbons. So if you notice, you have ribbon number 1. Nothing's going to happen to ribbon number 1. There is not going to be any shadows. So if you wanted to, you can take your pen and you can start to outline both sides of the ribbon. But then you're going to look at ribbon number 2 and see where it overlapped, where ribbon number 1 overlapped ribbon number 2. So you can see over here, it's right here where it overlaps each other, and this is where you're going to be putting the shadows. Now, if you're not really feeling confident or you want to practice some more, as I said before, you still have this background space, all of this extra space on your paper. You can certainly use another piece of paper, and you can set for yourself up a space in which you have these 2 overlapping ribbons like this. And you can go ahead and practice, like this would be your 1 and then this is your 2. So let me zoom in. So the idea is that you're going to be putting shadows on either side, and what it's going to do is it's going to create the illusion that this is on top. So what I tend to do is I go pretty dark with some lines on either side, just a tiny little bit of it. Then do some hatching and just kind of go up. This time it shouldn't be so close together. And when I do these, some could be a little bit longer and you kind of have them spread out. And then I'm going to go with a little bit more shading here just to darken it up, but not as dark as here, but not as light as over here. So I'll do it on the other side. So you're just going to add a couple of lines. So sometimes the transitions, meaning the amount of shadow that you put on, sometimes they're going to be really, really close to the initial space, like the darkest spot. Sometimes if you feel like you want to, you can take it out even further. It really kind of depends on each of the ribbons. The last thing you could do is you can just kind of go with a couple of little dots, kind of cluster the dots and do a little stippling. So it may take a little bit of time for you guys to practice and warm up until you get something that you like. And again, if you wanted to practice again, you could just put another ribbon behind here and you can go ahead and practice again. So as I said, really, really dark in here. And also, if you feel like the pen that you're using, and you have the option of switching it out, if the pen is just too thick, you might need to switch out the pen to something a little thinner. This one's working out for me okay. So I really like when I draw lines kind of following the ribbon. It just kind of further shows off that movement of the ribbon waving around. And a little bit more. This one I'm purposely trying to make it a little more close, like not as spread out here. I kept it a little tighter. Okay, so you can go ahead and practice this system a few times before you go ahead and you jump into your design here. So I definitely recommend practicing a bit. So one last time if you want to see, Get your line in here. If you have smaller areas, like you're gonna have these small little rectangular areas. Let me jump, let me jump in over here. If you look at, like, this spot right here is gonna be really small. This spot over here is small. Even this number 3 over here is crazy small. So, you know, you're really not gonna have that much room to do those shadowing areas. So you'd have to keep it pretty tight and do it pretty quick. So this time I'm almost doing like, kind of like stippling, like lines, but very, very short lines, almost like dots. So what you're eventually going to get is a really, really nice illusion in, like you can even just see this little sketch here, how, you know, it's really showing off a nice amount of shadowing. And once you kind of perfect it, you do a couple times here, then like I said, that's when I would expect you to jump right in here. I wouldn't want you to jump right into this picture immediately, not until you practice a bit, okay? So as I said, number 1 is not gonna have any shadowing at all. And then you're gonna go to number 2 and then jump to number 3. I'll show you that step next section. All right, so once you've practiced enough and you're ready to go, so you're gonna start off in the space where the 1 is overlapping the 2. So here is ribbon 1 overlapping ribbon 2. So again, you're gonna use I'd probably start off with a smaller pen than you think you need. If you have a choice, ballpoint pen is completely fine. Put the line through there. And what I like to do is I'd like to do some hatching and pull the lines kind of going in the direction of the ribbon. And so maybe I'll do a little cross hatching and go with a darker shade. So I'm putting in more, oh, that's the doorbell, putting in more shades, or another set of shades with another set of lines. And I can even go with a third to break it up. So you can see it, I have pretty much like 3 values. I got this one, and this one. And then maybe even to finish it off, maybe with a couple of pieces of little dots for stippling. Cluster them really close together here and out like that. So again, once you kind of come up with a system, you probably want to repeat the system, you know, some sort of continuity. So if you've done stripes and you like the way that looks, you put the stripes in on the other side. And you kind of do the same sort of format throughout, and dots like that. Okay, so that's number 2. So anywhere there's number 2, there's 2 pieces. Now I'm going to move on to 3. So if I look at the sections here, let me zoom back out a bit. Sorry about the shaking. I have this segment, and then this segment, and this segment. So you pick a segment wherever you want to start. The edges you're going to ignore. That's going to be something we're going to do at another time. So this time I'm doing a little something different. I'm going with some tight lines there, but I'm going back to those lines kind of coming out, following the direction of the ribbon, a couple of lines there, and of course the stippling. Like I said, you're going to just kind of come up with a system, and it's just going to be repetitive. And the reason why it's kind of nice having them numbered is so you kind of stay in order. You know, you're doing the number 3 areas now. And then when you finish your 3 segments, then you move on to the other ones. I'm going to mention to you, and I'll mention this right now, is when you get to these little tiny sections over here, there's really not, you don't have a lot of room. And I know that, like, I'm going to continue with the 3. Actually, let me slide over here because I have a nice little section here for 3. So you're not really going to have much room to do any shadowing. It's going to be all pretty much dark, but try to have some sort of variation of tone in there, if you can. Even if the whole thing's kind of dark and that whole thing's going to be kind of clustered, try to make it where it doesn't look like the background. You don't want it as dark as the background, but you also don't want it to be as light as here. So there are going to be some spaces that are going to be crazy small, and there's not going to be a lot of shadowing, but you really want to get that in. When you're on the edge here, this edge right here should be the darkest. Okay, that's really going to make it look as though these two pieces are shadowing this little guy here. So if you pull out a little bit in the view, you can really start to see that illusion of shadowing. Okay. Some people are going to go much lighter. Some people are going to go darker. Depending on the tools that you're using, it might look pretty different. You can always refer to the 3 samples that I have, and when I get this done, I'll probably have this out as a sample as well. So you're just going to keep on going with this particular method until all of the ribbon areas are shaded. Okay, so hatching, cross hatching, a little bit of stippling. All right, I'm done with, I got this little section of 3, then I'm going to go on to 4, etc., etc. So I will pick this up after I'm done with them all. The next video is going to show you guys how to finish up these ribbons. All right, one thing I want to bring to your attention is if you happen to have an area like right here where there's a twist. So that's going to get shaded too. So it's going to be kind of where the darkest part's going to be at the point, and the lightest, and then it gets lighter as it goes farther away from it. So you'll have that pretty dark in there, and then it'll fade out. So it kind of fans out a bit. Darker in the twist. Just like that. Okay. So again, that should look pretty good. All right, keep going. Okay, so when you are finished with all of your shadowing, it should look something like this. So you can always go back if there's areas that look too light or look like they don't blend really well. You can always go back and put some more stuff in. The one problem is if you think you went too dark somewhere, you can't lighten it up unless you're working with pencil. But I hope that you guys are working with pen. You're going to erase all the numbers, and that should clean it up really nicely. Now the last thing that I want to talk about, and this might be a little bit challenging for some of you guys, is to finish off these ribbons. There's going to be a couple of ways that you can do this, and I'll show you like the more simple way, and then I'll go into complex. So you have something like this. When this comes out here, you can certainly just bring the ribbon out and bring it back in, and that's fine. So you'd be erasing that straight line here, and you would leave the ribbon there. As long as it starts from there and finishes there, even if you made it a little wider than what we have there, and you want it to be nice and smooth. And then with this, there's no real shadowing in it or anything going on because nothing's overlapping it. So that should be that. Okay. So that's crazy easy. So if you have something that looks like it can pop in and out, you can certainly do something like that. So something like that kind of sits on its own like this right here. An option could be if it just folds down onto itself. So you're going to take the left side, and you're going to come up, and you're going to come around and drop it down. Now this piece will come up and drop just like that. So you can see it'll look like it kind of folds down onto itself. Okay, so that's one way. Now if you wanted this to kind of go more abruptly, if you wanted it to kind of drop down like this, that's fine. And then this guy kind of has to come up and then curve down like that. So the ribbon just kind of folds down. So these two lines, they come up and they come down. So if I showed you on a sample, like over here, Let's see. This is how it was finished off. So you can see that this part right here came up and around and down. So if you wanted to flatten the ribbon a little bit, that's fine too. Like here, if I wanted to make this a little bit flatter, that's okay too. Give it a little bit of a dip. Just like before, like in this area here, if you wanted to kind of set yourself up with something that comes up, like here's the ribbon that comes up, and if you wanted to kind of just practice a little bit that kind of system, you absolutely can do something like that. So once it looks good, then of course we're going to go over it in pen and erase it and clean it up. So that's pretty easy. Now if you have something in like here, this would kind of make sense where this could actually look as though it folds up and then comes back down here. It goes like this. This comes up and it's going to go down to here. The one to the left is going to go to the one on the left. There's a lot to erase, so don't be alarmed with what's going on here. And then this piece goes to the right, to the right. Okay. So if you have two ribbons, one comes here and the other comes here, and you want to join, make it look like they're joined together, you go to the left and it goes to the left here. Like this is ribbon number one. Here's the first, this is the one to the left, there's the one to the right. This goes up and it goes to the one on the right. This one comes up and it's going to go to the one on the left. And then you're going to connect all of this together like that. Okay, and then this pumps up. And you erase that, because one piece is going to overlap the other piece. So you can decide on whether this piece, this ribbon is going to be in front of this, and then you would erase this part, or if this one is going to be in front of this piece, you would erase that part. So you'd have to decide. So, you know, which one is going to be in front, that one will be in front, and that one comes down there. Okay, so that's another way you can do that. So when I come back to here, it's going to come up, and I'm going to join this together over here. Now if I wanted, since this piece already, number 9 is in front of number 4, behind number 4 wins. That's going to be just like that. Okay. So some pieces you can just kind of end just real quick like that, so you can see what's happening. All right. Let's see. So again, this guy, if I wanted these two to be on the same ribbon, I can have this coming up and around, but it's got to eventually hit over here. This is going to come up and around and eventually come over here. And then I'm going to connect this whole thing together, like that. So maybe I want this ribbon to be in the front. It's going to take some practicing, and it's going to take a lot of just a little patience, and then you're going to get it. Okay. This could be something, if you want to Google it, you can certainly Google it. Now, if I have something like here, I can have these two joining together. Same idea. It's going to take a long way to get there. So I'm going to go around. However it goes like that. This guy, let's see if I try it out and I kind of come like this. So this ribbon, it's going to come up and around. I don't know, that looks kind of okay. Well, maybe this one might fold over a bit more. If I went like that. Oh, that actually looks pretty cool. It looks like the ribbon went around, and then this piece went around the back. It came around that way. So that actually looks pretty cool, pretty doable. And I'm going to keep going, actually.
this piece I'll have going like, whoops, this piece coming down here, this piece coming over like this. This piece overlaps. This here, there's not much to do because it's like this piece folded over and it's like a sharp fold. This one, I'm just gonna have it look like it went behind it, just like that. This guy I'm gonna take down here. Alright. This one, I think what I'm gonna just have it do is fold down this way. And it looks okay. Let's have this one and this one connect together. Sorry about that. That goes there, and then this goes down, swoops like that. Oh wow, I was doing that whole thing, you didn't see it. So I actually ignored this guy for a second and I wanted to join these two together. So I went up to the right hand side of it and it's going to connect over here. And then this guy came around and connected over there. And I'll have this one in front. And this guy, I'll just have him dropping down. He's not having to hang with anything. He's just going to come in and out all by himself. Real quick, kind of be like that. This guy here, drop all by itself. This guy as well, dropping out all by himself. So if you're really struggling with this part and you're having, a lot of questions about it, just, reach out to me. I can help you out. There are a lot of videos out there, and I don't want to be like, oh, just Google it. But honestly, if you end up having some trouble with this, and you can Google up, drawing techniques, how to make, ribbons look like, folded ribbons or something, you absolutely will, trust me, you will find stuff. I do want you to just kind of try it out. And whatever you do in pencil, you can always erase it. Oh, what do you know? I think I got everything done. Let me zoom back down, and I think I got everybody done. And then all you do is, after you're happy with it, you go over with the pen, and you are going to outline everything. The very last part of this is, after you're done with this, and then you erase it, there's going to be parts where you have to put in some shadowing. Because now we have new parts of the ribbon that overlap, and now you have to start shadowing. So what that's going to look like is very, very similar to what we have done inside here. There's no numbering involved, but if you see something that overlaps something else, you're going to have to put some shadowing in to finish it off. So to give you a simple one, a couple of simple places. So right here, you can see that this piece right here will have shadow here as well. So you're just going to finish it off with the shadow, kind of like what was going on already. And then this here, you just outline. Okay, same thing with this one. There's going to be shadowing under here now because this piece folds with this guy underneath. So which direction will the ribbon go? Well, it'll go in that direction. So you can bring it down like this. It's going to be very, very dark in here, and then it's going to get a little lighter. Nothing's overlapping this piece. Okay, so this piece is definitely overlapping, so you bring that down get that a little shadowed there. So you just keep going with the process, and then, sorry, I'm going to try to zoom back. There you go. After you're done with everything, you start erasing everything, all the pencil, and then this should look pretty cool. And I'll show you the end product in a minute. Okay, so I'm just back for a couple of little other shading areas. So again, if I ask you which one is on top, which one folds over, this one folds over this one. And so this is going to be shadowed. So you're just going to follow the same exact kind of thing as you did in the whole picture. You know, same format, whether you did stippling or hatching, cross-hatching, or like I did a combination. You can create the illusion of that being shadowed. A couple of dots here and there. So over here on this side, you have this and this shadowed. So I love the look of these. I think they look super cool, and I really, really hope that you enjoy this process as well. This is probably going to be one of those projects that when I get back in the classroom, it's going to be an actual assignment, because like I said, I really enjoy doing this kind of process. It's a challenge for me, and because working with pen and ink, I'm more accustomed to working with shadows and shading, working with you know, something like pencil, where you can take your finger and you can smudge it, or even colored pencil, you can do that. But with this, you're really kind of just surrendering to, you know, a bunch of lines. And the bottom line is, the more ink you put down, the darker it's going to look. The less ink you put down, the lighter it's going to look. So if you want something to look darker, you put more lines down, whether it's going to be dots or it's going to be or lines. And that's really going to create that illusion of space and depth and three-dimensionality and all of that. All right, so there's going to be some challenges when you get there. You can try out some things in pencil, like let's say, oh, I'm not quite sure what's going to be shadowed there. But again, just kind of consider what's behind whatever, and whatever's going to be in the back, that's what you're going to shadow. You're going to shadow the spaces that are behind first, and then you can go ahead and erase your lines afterwards. But whatever's behind gets shadowed. If there's something underneath, that gets shadowed. The stuff on top does not get shadowed. So this has a bunch of different kinds of shadows going on, so I hope this doesn't look too confusing when it's done. But like I said, I enjoy this whole process. I think it's pretty, this project's pretty cool when it's all done. I'm almost done. Got this section right here. And yeah, that is a done deal, I'm believing. I think it did enough. Looks pretty good. All right, and then I'm just gonna have my finale with the final outcome with the picture, and you are good to go.